Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of Impactful Conversations. I am thrilled today to be joined by Venencia Mhonde. She's an account manager, Master of International Business holder, Model UN delegate, and from the 1st of August, actually going to be an author as well, which is awesome. Um, Her journey, she's had a very illustrious journey in her tertiary education, obtaining a Bachelor of Social Sciences and psychology and sociology as well. She also did a postgraduate diploma in management and corporate governance as well. And then she rounded off with the Master of International Business. And she has a very strong corporate background, in project management, risk governance, and compliance strategy. So I am thrilled to be joined by her today. And I'm thrilled that you are watching or listening to this, if it's via YouTube or via one of the podcast platforms. We're thrilled to have you today. Once you're done with the episode, you can go to the website, which is impactfulconversations.co.za, and head over to the feedback section where you can pop us a one-liner or a paragraph or an essay, whatever you feel like, and let us know how the platform and the episode as well has impacted you, and give us your thoughts on some of the topics as well. Venencia, thank you so much for joining us in episode 15. I'm thrilled to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. The sun is shining again,
Yeah, it's awesome.
which is such a huge relief because I'm not a winter baby, but I'm doing great.
No, me neither. I must confess, I've always said that the winter is better than the summer because you can do something about the cold. But I'm strongly like doubting my own my own, my own stance this year. I don't know whether it's because like it's a pandemic or I'm not so sure.
It's not coming together.
It's just not aligning with me. But yeah, no, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us on episode 15. I know you have followed the show from its inception, so I'm thrilled to have you here. So you know how this works from some of the episodes that you've watched, but to kickstart us off, I want people to get to know you a little bit better. Um, you know, Tell us a little bit about who you are, where are you from, what did you study, as well as what are you passionate about?
Okay, cool. Thanks for having me again. I've been a fan since you obviously started this, and I'm so glad to finally be a part of it. Um, I I don't know where to start. I guess I was actually born in Zim, so I'm from Harare. But
Mm.
my dad is an expat, so I was raised in Malawi, which is pretty interesting because I pretty much spent about like 7 years in Zim, and then the rest of my like teenage years I was in Malawi. So I went to school there. Moved to South Africa in 2012, and that's when I started at Monash, and then like pretty much stuck with Monash all the way through my tertiary education. And yeah, maybe that's where my passion for just trying to understand people and trying to understand different cultures and how different people are actually came from. So that's why I studied psych, and then eventually I realized I just didn't want to sit in a room like this for the rest of my life. So I decided to throw in some business because I wanted to go into the consulting space, and that's what my core passion is. I love strategy, I love consulting, I love people, and I just try to weave that into anything that I get involved in, both in the corporate and in my personal life.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So I I guess we can dive straight into things, right? Let's talk about where you ended off, which is the corporate world, and our first topic, I guess, is um, you you're obviously in the business world, but you have a background of studying, psychology, sociology, as well as social sciences as well. Um, you know, tell me a little bit about. Firstly, tell me a little bit about your journey into the business world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tell me a little bit about that journey, but also why or how, I suppose, how then why, you ended up in client services.
Okay. So it's not a glamorous story, which I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Real story. No
But
real
here's the story.
like this is unfortunately like our lives are not a Netflix documentary. Right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, the beginning really wasn't cute. My parents left Malawi in 2012, and I was supposed to be doing my A levels around that time.
yeah.
And it was just going to be such a big shift, losing them and having them go back to Zim and being stuck in a foreign country on my own. So I actually decided to drop out.
Oh.
Very few people know this. Halfway through my A levels, I decided that I'd rather just move to Joburg and do a foundation program in something. So halfway through my A levels, I left Malawi, left school, and I applied to do the foundation program at Monash. And somehow, don't know how, I was placed in first year, and I was only 17 at the time.
Oh.
So yeah, my dad was like, what do you want to study? And I just thought, business is going to be such a big step or big jump for me. So I decided to do social sciences because I always thought, hey, that's pretty much a foundation to anything. And so, I'd done a bit of psych in the first year of my A levels, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm just going to go do psych. And then I started doing psych, and like I literally felt like I was drowning. The first couple of years, I mean, no one tells you about stats and all those exciting things, just when I thought I was dodging numbers. So, I did psych, and going through the program and just realizing, this isn't what I want to do. But I wasn't going to quit again. Like, it felt like that thing was like, okay, you've already dropped one thing, you're not going to drop another. And so I finished it. And when I was ready to actually jump back into doing maybe like a bachelor of business science or something more business inclined, because that's something I enjoy, the opportunity came to do a postgrad diploma in management. And I was like, okay, cool. That doesn't sound too bad. And it wasn't bad at all. And then when I finished, my mentor at the time was like, just do the master's, which was, wow, it was the biggest jump or the biggest shift that I've ever had to make, because I'd never done like a module of management or corporate finance or economics or law or any of the topics that I had to cover. So I think for me, the one thing that kind of kept me going was having the right friends and knowing the right people. And going through that in varsity, I decided, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be in a space where you know the right people and you can get something done. And that's actually how I moved into, wanting to work with people and wanting to be the bridge between, the people that know what's going on and the people that are trying to get something done. So started out in project management, and then pretty much opportunities came, and I evolved into pretty much becoming an account manager. But that's how it started. It actually started with being someone that's an expert at something that they actually haven't done for a very long time.
Yeah. That's I really think your story is powerful. As you're sort of talking, I'm like my mind is sort of racing because you've made sort of key decisions, along the way. I think the one thing that stands out is the fact that you decided from a very early sort of age to own your story, and to fight for your future, which is a very important characteristic, and something which has already, I'm sure, and will continue to stand you in great stead. So now you're in the business world.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what is your approach, right? How do you I mean, for the layperson, right, who's hasn't been to for the person who hasn't even been into business, into the business world or the corporate world, as it were, what is your approach to business and to people, right? The two juxtaposed next to each other.
I think, especially, South Africa is interesting.
Yeah.
Because they, as much as they are almost like two separate things, there's such a strong correlation. And if you don't understand people, you won't understand business, and
Yeah.
vice versa. And, for me, one of the things that I've come to realize or come to learn is people like me. It's like, like it's a hit or miss, yes, but when people like me, they really like me. And when
Yeah.
people don't like me, they really don't like me.
Mm.
And what happens when people like you is people buy people and not products. And I think for me it's been that thing where I'm like, if you establish the right relationship, if you take the time to actually understand someone, if you
Mm.
make someone feel heard and understood, and even if you don't have a solution on the ground for them, just that feeling of being heard and being understood, whether that's a business problem, whether it's someone trying to solve an issue within their organization, if you make them feel important, they buy into you and what you're investing, by being there for them. And that's been like literally like it's been my key to everything. My clients know that they can count on me to go above and beyond, and I'll put all the resources, I'll put the skills, and if I can't do it, I know a guy. I think people really just, they buy people, and once you understand that and once you crack that, the business part of things comes naturally, because now you're trusted and you're an advisor. So I think that's how I've navigated that space, and that's how I've made my way through corporate, and also just taking the time to listen. I think a lot of us just take in all this info, and we want to look like we're doing great things, but we're actually not being present. And I try to work for organizations that have the same values as me. So when I actually started out in client services, used to be with another company that used to do some other things I didn't believe in, and for me it was like, this is not what I want to be associated with. I genuinely want to make a difference. Work for organizations or associate yourself with organizations that align with your values, and the
Mm.
rest just unfolds.
Mm. Mm. That's really important what you said there, and I think the people-centered approach is I think so powerful, but something which is not it's not well known and well applied either. But once it is extremely powerful. You're right. People buy into people, right? You buy into the person who's selling you a service first before you even listen about the service. Um, so I mean, naturally, keeping on the topic of people, you naturally do a lot of networking, within your job, outside of your job. Um, how do you think, you know, what you actually, how important do you think that is, networking in and of itself, um, to what I would call the trajectory and the pace of development of your career?
Um, I think I've got to where I'm at because someone believed in me.
Mm.
Okay. Whether that's like in a boardroom or in an interview, or like pretty much everything I've managed to achieve, I've got because someone said yes, or someone decided to take a chance on me.
Yeah.
And so, no one's gonna take a chance on you if they don't know you. And you have to get out there and get to know people.
Mm.
I think one of the sort of like one of the things people misunderstand about networking is they have this idea that when you meet someone, they immediately have to have a place in your life. And that's how we sort of decide which relationships are valuable. We're like, okay, what can this person do for me? And I think that is probably one of the things this generation has to unlearn. This idea that it will all make sense. Like I'll meet you at an event, and then it's going to be like, okay, V, I want to work with you and I want to do this with you. It's
And
all about
uh,
no, like it's true. Like,
tomorrow
if
you'll
you
be
can't see how
in
they
New
fit,
York. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, if you can't see how they fit in your current situation, you're like, okay, cool, so I don't really need to, like, I don't need to get to know them. But the number of times that someone I've met like 2 years ago has popped up and said, listen, I thought of you today and I thought that this would be a great opportunity. I think that's what we miss. You
Yeah.
know, it's not maintaining relationships because they don't seem as if they create value in that moment.
Mm.
And so I've always come from this background where, you know, like my dad's one of those people that's big on, you might meet someone today and you don't see how they fit and you don't see what value they bring, but that's not an excuse not to nurture the relationship and to grow it. And as you grow and evolve and they grow and evolve, you know, that's how you start reciprocating, and that's how, like, you start working together. So I think for me it's been a thing of, you know, not just people do this whole like speed networking thing where, yeah, let's just go because I want to meet this person who's going to introduce me to that person. I don't believe in that. I believe in establishing a relationship with people that have your vibe. That's important as well. Like, I'm big on vibes. I mean, we met
Yeah.
on Instagram because I
Yeah.
liked your picture and I was like, I love your content. I had no idea that this opportunity would present itself one day. And
Exactly.
we've nurtured our relationship and look at us now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's you've touched on something so important there, the people centered approach, right? Um,
Mm,
I think you are right that, sometimes it gets a little bit too transactional, right? It's like,
mm,
okay, but yes, fine, I can meet this person, but what can they do for me right now? Like,
mm.
if you can't offer me a job and a six-figure salary at this moment in time, thanks.
There's
I
no
want nothing to do
excuse.
with you. That's not the
Yeah.
point. You
Mm,
value people, intrinsically as for who they are first, and
mm-hmm.
not for what they can do for you. So I absolutely love what you've touched on there. I want to know, and to bring it back, to client services a bit,
Yeah.
that obviously brings about a lot of challenges, right? And how does what you studied, you know particularly, I'm talking your social sciences, psychology and sociology, right? How does that help you, do you think, to navigate that world?
That's an interesting question. You know, when I was younger, I always just wanted a job that would pretty much allow me to use all my skills, you know, like the full skill set. And I kept ending up in situations where it was like, okay, just the compliance part, or just the governance, or, you know, just the project management, or whatever it was.
Mm.
And one of the reasons why I actually joined the company I'm with now is because we study people. So I'm in market research at the moment.
Mm.
And what that entails is giving people, often people that don't get the opportunity to speak, giving them a voice. And, you know, I mean, obviously, because of that approach, there's a lot of emotions
Yeah.
that are bound to bounce around in the room. And I'm talking emotions in terms of my researchers, because they're also very passionate about what they do and how they drive insights.
Mm.
Emotions from my clients. My clients tend to be very protective of their markets. So they don't want their market to be, you know, portrayed in a certain way that doesn't really tell their story. Emotions in terms of my team, client services. Yes, even though we drive relationships with people, those relationships eventually have to equate to a rand value. You
Yeah.
know, so there's all that pressure as well from a sales and you know, client services perspective, and just having all of that energy in one room. I struggled in the beginning. I absolutely struggled. And one of the things my MD kept saying to me is, at the end of the day, they're just people. And, you know, I think psych kicked in there because it's understanding, you know, someone's upset because this is something they're passionate about, or
Mm.
someone is willing to invest in this because it's important to them. So it's just understanding the emotional side of the individuals, even though they're experts across their different, you know, across their different divisions, and then understanding how to sort of like build a strategy and to consult. And at the end of the day, I mean, you know, like, businesses are here and they need to make money.
Yes.
So it's been interesting trying to marry the two, and doing it in a way where, you know, sometimes I got to bring out like emotional Venencia, sometimes I got to bring out tough love Venencia. sometimes I gotta, protect client, protect market, whoever it is. And just once you apply, psych and understanding those individuals, then you can sort of like alternate between, you can alternate between personalities, if I can call it that.
That's such an intelligent approach. Because actually people are not robots, right? It's like everybody, right?
Yeah.
Has those feelings and feels very strongly about certain things, and that's why sometimes people will come across very strongly in a conversation in a boardroom, for example, because they feel very strongly about it. And sometimes it's also, you have to realize that a lot of things are also tied to people's self-worth as well. So I think you've cracked it there. I think you are somebody who has a strong personal brand, right? Now, okay, before I get to my question,
Okay.
there's a question.
I can see your brain buzzing, like you've got a lot.
Yeah, my brain is just going. You are somebody with a strong personal brand. Now, like I said, I'll park my question now. We'll just park that for a bit.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, cool.
There's a question from one of our listeners who submitted a question in the Q&A pre the episode. And the listener asked, so how have you built such a strong personal brand? That's the first question from one of the listeners. I will slide in the other question from one of the listeners after you've answered this one. So how have you built such a strong personal brand? Where did this come from? How did this become a thing? And was it, I guess the other question is, which I'll plug in as my sort of listener question, and with my little ad lib is was it always intentional to build that strong personal brand, or did you kind of stumble upon it as well?
Okay. So I'll start with the first question, which is, how have I sort of like reached this point where I feel like I've got this brand and it's consistent, and it definitely speaks to who I am, and I've kind of like cracked it in that sense. I made a decision very early in my career that I wanted to be authentic. I have always been the other in the room.
Okay.
Obviously I mentioned that I was raised in Malawi. I was raised in a foreign country. So I came in as the other girl, the other person. And I've always sort of like had a different vibe to everyone else. And, I've always felt quite different to everyone else. And I made a decision that, whatever I put out there should be about embracing that and embracing, how I'm different and why I'm different and what I'm about, and sticking to it, even if you don't, if you don't vibe with it. It is who I am, and just loving that about myself. And it's interesting, but everyone else who feels the same way will understand you, and they'll receive that and they'll buy into it. So I think that's how it's happened. It's been a thing where, sometimes I'm in rooms or I'm in shoots, and they're like, if you wear this, or if you pose like this, or if you do this, you would have so many more followers. I'm like, I'd have more followers, but not the followers I want. And not the followers who consume the kind of content that I'm about. So in the very beginning, I was like, this is the brand, this is the Venencia they're gonna get. And if you are not about it, then you're not my audience. And yeah, that's how it happened, by just sticking to be myself and embracing it, and not trying to alter it because I'm trying to make money or trying to get more I was just like, no, it's not for me. So that's how it happened. And I guess, like I said, a lot of the things that have happened in my life have happened because someone bought into that person and bought into me wanting to be different. I started in a personal brand. I started like my whole hustle um, because I was with someone and he was like, you could post a flower and someone would be like, hey, 300 likes or whatever. Like you could post a plant and people would be like, oh, hey, cool photo. And he was like, but you need to take that influence and do good with it, you know? And around that time, that's when I decided to do the whole thing where I'm like, okay, fine, let's change people's perceptions about themselves one post at a time. So it was intentional, but it was always just to change one life. I never thought that I'd be in this privileged position where I can tell my story to like hundreds of people at the same time. It was always just a thing of, if I change one life, if I can inspire one girl, if I can inspire one person to stick to school or to stick to their job or build their career, then like I'm sorted. I would have used my impact and my influence for good. So it's blown up, I guess, a bit like your platform, yeah.
For the for sliding in a compliment at the end of all of that. But sure, what a powerful answer. I think what you've touched on is incredibly powerful. That you've decided to use that influence for good. I really love that. I think that's so important because it could easily swing the other way, right? You could easily have gone the other way, but you've actually, and what I absolutely love is you have decided what it is that you value, and you will only do those things that align with what it is that you value. I absolutely love that. The other question from another listener, and yeah, I'm quoting the listener here, but
Okay.
how can I become so confident like you?
I guess it's gonna be different for every person because you draw your energy or your vibe from different places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just made a decision that I would pursue what I want to pursue, and I would do everything in my power to be good at it. And just if you decide that you're going to do something, you don't just sort of like put your toes in and just like half step into it. I don't half step, I don't half try, I don't, like none of that. And I think just being sure of what you want makes you sure of who you are. That's step one for me. Step two is you gotta come, it starts on the inside. You gotta come from a place of self-love. You really, really have to, because the whole journey and the whole process, it's emotional, and it's a lot of difficult decisions and difficult choices and choosing yourself over and over and over again, and just protecting yourself and being kind to yourself and nurturing yourself. And as you do that, there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of people that like, who does she think she is? What is she doing? People who don't agree with what you do. But if you're so sure and so loving of yourself, like the confidence comes naturally because you're just sure of who you are. Yeah. So a bit of an emotional answer, but
well, it's an emotional topic and an emotional question. It fully warrants that. And I think you've done it justice. Now to my question, which
your question.
So my actual question was, you're somebody with a very strong personal brand. And what I wanted to ask you is what three words or phrases are you intentionally wanting people to associate with you?
Um, the one word that's like top of mind and that I absolutely embrace is powerhouse. I have always wanted to be a powerhouse.
Mm.
The second is inspirational. And the third is consistent.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Sure. Powerhouse, inspiration, consistent. That's
Yeah.
like the manual of life. Like, I absolutely love that. I,
Yeah.
I
You can steal it. You can steal it. Just credit me, but you can steal it.
I should have used that in the intro for you. But
Oh, wow.
I okay, that was a very we sort of dived straight into it. We turned up the heat. Let's turn the heat down a little bit. Okay, so
Okay.
before we get to
Okay.
the other topics, tell me a little bit about your current daily routine. What does a typical day in your life look like right now? At time of recording, we are in level 3 lockdown.
Mhm.
Our cases are over 400,000. Sadly, we have over 6,000 deaths as well. Yeah, what does a typical day in the current life, in the current scope, look like for you? And with that, are you a morning or evening person?
Ah, that's actually a good place to start because that will tell you a lot more about my day. I don't like mornings. I don't have, that spring in your step and that whole I'm ready to take over. I don't have that in the morning.
Uh-huh.
I am probably, and I'm so glad that I work, I work for a company that gets that. Venencia is only going to start work at about 9:30. So, before lockdown, we had the choice of what time you want to come into work, and that determines what time you go home.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person that will get up at like 8:30, take a shower, check in with my mom because I know it's going to be chaotic and I don't get much time to speak to her. And then, then I ease into work, and work is the same for me from home or at the office. Like it's been the same thing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy in the sense that if I sit in front of my desk at 9:30, I probably don't get up until about 6 p.m. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's just for me to try and get some food and then continue. So I work a lot in terms of my actual, I kind of call it an 8 to 5. But my brain does amazing things at night. I solve problems. I'm so much like I'm proper like powered up at night. So I prefer to work at night than during the day.
Mm.
And I sort of like save my time in the day where I can to be with my family. Um, what else do I do? I pretty much work, guys. Like it's quite sad, but like I'll only reply to like WhatsApp messages and check in with everyone around 8 p.m. And then I'm a co-parent to my little niece. I call
Mm.
myself a co-parent. And then like, I'll put mini me to bed around 10:30, maybe if it's like a day where she's getting high off apples.
Mm.
But yeah, and then I work again till I fall asleep. So it's a lot of work. I guess even my weekends are the same because I save my weekends to create content,
Mm.
and to do like my side hustle and like my part of the whole mix. But yeah, I work pretty much all day, every day.
Mm. And I think a lot of people would resonate that with that right now, in the work
Yeah.
from home life. I've read a lot of articles about, people feel that now with the work from home life, they're struggling to actually find the boundary between when you come home in the
Mm-hmm.
the emotional sense,
Mm-hmm.
and when you leave work in the emotional sense as well. The one thing I want to ask you is life before COVID-19. Um,
Yeah.
what do you miss most about life pre global pandemic?
Okay. So I mean, with the way my routine is set up, I'll be honest, I usually drive from the office at like 10, 11 p.m.
Sure.
That's, yeah. So, this this whole working late into the night because we're home now, for me, like, yeah, I've been doing it for a while. And the one thing I absolutely love is just, coming home or driving home and just being able to stop somewhere cute, you know, just spaces with
Mm,
other people,
mm,
and just, having really good food, and being able to meet up with my friends over the weekend and to just laugh at life and to be out there and to do spontaneous things like we drive and, we explore and we travel quite a bit. Like, I miss that. I just miss people, like
yeah.
my tribe, you know? Yeah, I definitely miss that. I miss being able to actually live. It feels like the last few months I've been existing, because it's just like wake up, do what you need to do, and then keep it going.
Yeah.
I just
Mm,
miss feeling alive, like those little things that make you feel like, yes, yeah, I miss that. And you
yeah.
get that outside.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Something different. I follow you. I think it is there is, you know, um, I recently went into a shopping mall like to pick
Yeah.
up something, and it's like you sort of step back and you're like, sure,
Yeah.
like I miss this. like miss, I miss like
It's just sad,
not a,
like,
I'm not a big fan of shopping myself. Like I'm the kind who really wants to sort of, I have my list of 5 things and that's all I'm gonna get,
mm-hmm.
right? Even if I see something which like, deviates from the plan, I'm like, well, no, like I need
You're
to
not
get
on my list.
I need to get my things done and get on with my day. But even I, right, a non-shopping
Uh-huh.
enthusiast is like, yeah, sure. Like I actually missed this. I can totally relate with that. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk about being when you said this to me, um, being the Olivia Pope, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, and for people who don't know who Olivia Pope is, depending on where you are in South Africa, the show is called The Fixer because we actually have a show called Scandal already. And in the rest of the world or most parts of the world, it is called Scandal. And um, the lead actress in the Shonda Rhimes, massive fan of Shonda Rhimes, by the way, myself. But in the Shonda Rhimes series, or rather, yeah, series, is a lady called Olivia Pope, who's played by Kerry Washington, and she fixes everything, right? So, okay, aside from that, tell me, you have watched Scandal before, correct?
Mm-hmm. When I had time, yes.
Who was your favorite character other than Olivia Pope? If it is Olivia Pope, but other than that,
I think I really vibed with Carrie slash Olivia.
mm,
For so many reasons, and maybe that's why, like, I like to think of myself as the fixer. But I really vibed with how that character was positioned.
mm,
I think because, like, women wear so many hats, and she portrayed that so well in Scandal, where, we're out here chasing careers, we're chasing love, we have sometimes complicated family dynamics. Something as simple as her relationship with her dad, for
yeah,
me, was something that, I had moments where I was like, okay, I can see where this is coming from.
mm,
Yeah, and it was, it's that whole thing, being able to relate to someone. And in many ways, I felt like I could relate to her. Yeah, so I think I really vibed with that character. Yeah, she's my
mm.
fave. Mm.
That's also I I never quite had a favorite character myself. I more sort of have favorite moments. I
Yes.
used to absolutely love her monologues. Her monologues were like so powerful. Like when she would just like like rev everybody up. Like I, as like a non-American, was like, okay, like we need to fight for America. It's like
I'm a little biased on favorite episodes. It's actually more of a scene. So when she's got the big wine glass and it's been a long day and she's just like, I got myself one. I am that hun. I got myself one.
That's hilarious. Savida, I am an avid watch all, but when the show was still going on, and very sad that it ended, but
Yeah.
an excellent show. I also loved, so it's like she had really powerful monologues and like, made me feel like I wanted to put on what was it called, the white hat, right, as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool, like let's fight like for America, and I'm like, I'm in South Africa. I'm not
My struggle.
anyway near American, but that sort of feel. But I really want to hop on this the fixer element.
Okay.
How would you describe yourself as a fixer, one, and if you do, you know how would you describe yourself as a fixer, or if you are a fixer?
In the corporate space,
Mm.
I mean those people that know me sort of on a personal level will know that at least 3 or 4 times a week, my WhatsApp story or status is this guy trying to put out like a huge fire with the tiny bucket. And I'm always like, in case anyone's wondering how my day is going. And that's my meme. But because my life is like that, I often joke with my boss that I don't do account management, I do crisis management. And I'm constantly putting out fires, and it's so different when, the type of work that we do has real impact, not only on people's lives, but on businesses, on large corps, on, it's stuff that you just can't play around with. And I find myself in situations literally where I'm like, how is this even happening? Or where it's like 8 p.m. at night and my boss sends me a screenshot and he's like, please find out who did this. And it's just, I've become that person that is, because I am pretty much like the middleman between client, supplier, my team and the company, I find myself having to fix everything. It's a constant, yes, okay, client is gonna lose out here, so I need to manage that and I need to fix that, and I don't want to lose that account. It's just so many different moving parts, and all these people and all these personalities, and it's crisis after crisis after crisis. I mean, we joked earlier where I was like, it'll be like a day when my best focus group won't record and my backup recorder will switch off, and client is like, Exco wants to see that recording. I'm like, where do I begin? So yeah, I'm in a position where I'm constantly having to think on my feet, and like I have grown so much and I've adapted to sort of working under that pressure and being able to make the right decisions, and decisions for the good of everyone involved, and also just like putting out fires. I think, yeah, so I think of myself as a fixer in that sense. But yeah, in my personal life, now that's a whole mess. But
so
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, right? So ultimately, right, you being the fixer, at least the way I see it is it's about problem solving, right? That's what it is. Problem comes up, you solve the problem. Now, you right at the very beginning, you talked about your love and passion for strategy.
Yeah.
Link that back for me. That desire to solve problems, but also with the broadest sort of scope of strategy as well.
I think what's interesting and what I love the most, I'm actually going to link it all the way back to what I studied. I have such a versatile academic and professional history and my experience, especially coming into, a market research firm,
Yeah.
I see things from the outside. And I love the fact that, I work for a company that harnesses that and that grows and nurtures that,
Mm.
because they appreciate my outsider input. So a lot of the times what you find is people are trying to mark their own homework when it comes to building strategies, when it
Mm.
comes to finding solutions. But the great thing about seeing things from the outside looking in is you have insight that is so different. Like your perspective and your view is so different that you bring in something new and you bring something different to the table.
Yeah.
So, I think that's why I can actually navigate and not only fix problems, but land certain, land certain things for the company and for my clients,
Mm.
because I see things from a very different perspective. So I love not being an expert in what I do, but being great at doing it. It's like one of those, yeah, it's one of those interesting spaces to find yourself in, where you're not an expert in that industry. You're almost like an out of industry expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's such a different way of looking at it. I absolutely love that perspective. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for a bit of a difficult question, if you didn't think questions were already hard, right? How so how do you balance your your natural leadership skills that you have, right,
Mm-hmm.
with that of being a fixer? Now, if I contextualize this question a little bit, being a fixer can go one of two ways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Problems come to you, you solve them, and you almost become a silo in and of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you you don't actually end up bringing others with you, um, you know, with you along on that journey. How do you balance your leadership skills that you have, right, and your potential to put to positively influence people with your phenomenal skill of being able to problem solve?
Yeah. Um, Priorities.
Mm.
So for every sort of problem or every situation you find yourself in, you have to build some sort of like a priority list. There are times where I'm dealing with a work problem, but I can see that it's happened because there's an emotional situation that's taking place with the next person, you know? And so you quickly gotta be like, okay, cool, address the emotional, or do I start with the work thing so that the work thing is out the way and she's not under pressure, and then we can address the emotional. Like, you constantly have to assess and read people and read the situation and build like a priority list. And I have to confess, I don't always get it right. There are times that I try to just be like, okay, let's just get the project out the way, and then we realize it's actually just getting worse, because people's emotions are not in the right place. And then I got to reprioritize and then be like, okay, let's address the emotional, and then we'll address the work thing, or let's split this. And then I'll run with like the emotional side of things, or I'll get my MD to run with the emotional side of things, and then I run with project. So it's being able to actually firstly identify what is actually happening,
Yeah.
and then being able to prioritize and just go down your list. I think that's how I've sort of like taught myself to manage it and to handle it. Hope
Mm.
that answers your question. It was a bit of a tricky one.
It does. It is a very
Mm.
tricky question. I must admit that I also haven't been able to find a coherent answer, but I think your answer is an excellent one. Because to me it touches again on the people side of things and on the
Mm.
emotional side of things, and not necessarily approaching the problem as an Excel spreadsheet, for example, right? It might it might on the face of it present itself as an Excel spreadsheet, but actually the problem is an interpersonal one, right? So
Yeah.
I absolutely love how you have approached that, and that certainly more than answers the question. So what what are the challenges that you experience, right, with
Mhm.
being a fixer? Do you ever feel overwhelmed or stretched? And if you do, um, what are the coping mechanisms? So, healthy coping mechanisms, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
What are the sort of two things, or one or three things that you do to remind yourself that um, this is not the be all and end all of life, but rather to contextualize it in the broader sense?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned like healthy strategies.
Yeah.
Because if I'm being honest, there's something very addictive about continuously being on the go. Um, I don't know if it's because, like I worked full time while I studied. And I've always been a person that's just under pressure, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times at work, one of the reasons why I'm like constantly online and I'm constantly doing stuff and I'm constantly attending to issues is because I actually don't know how to stop. And it's addictive because it's the only way I actually know how to live. How to live.
Mm,
I don't know how to be idle. I don't know how to just sort of like shut down.
mm,
And I think with everything that's been happening, mid pandemic, I actually had a consult with a doctor that looks at the biological and the social aspects of health.
yeah.
And I had to sit and do this exercise where he was like, I need you to list all of your priorities. How much time and effort and how important is it, you know? And how much time, effort, importance are you actually giving it? And being able to reflect and just sort of actually look at what my life should look like versus how I've been living. I'm now trying to learn how to like draw boundaries, something as simple as that. I'm constantly just, reaching out to my mentors and trying to get like reading material and, um, I mean, that's what I love about Women of Stature, which is the organization I'm a part of and I won an award for.
Mm,
But like Charlotte will reach out and she'll be like, okay, cool, but we have this lady in the network and she does, like hypnotherapy or whatever it is, and then she'll link me to that person. Or she'll be like, actually, I'm hosting a talk or webinar, or you can speak to this life coach and he specializes on managing your time effectively.
mm,
So once again, for me, it comes down to, being able to reach out to people and actually just being able to be honest
mm,
when I'm not coping. And also just, it's important to be in a space where the people you fix things for reciprocate.
yeah.
Like the relationship has to be mutual. And I think that's why I cope, because I do find myself in a space where I can go to someone and be like, listen, I don't have capacity right now. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm always ready to fix, I'm always ready to be here, always ready to sort you out, but right now I don't have capacity.
Mm,
And yeah, so it's that like double-edged sword. Like when I started with the company, I was always very conscious about being honest that I suffer from anxiety.
mm,
Um, and that when it does get overwhelming, I stop sleeping and then I stop eating, and then like it's just terrible for my personal health.
mm,
But now I'm in a space where I'm okay with not being okay.
mm,
and,
mm. That's important.
and reaching out. So it's addictive. Like, I burn out a lot. I probably, yeah.
Mm, mm.
I would. Now I'm in a position where I see it before it happens, and I'm like, I need to take a step back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredibly important, right?
And I guess just I've sort of evolved into a space where I struggle. Yeah, so I pick my struggles now.
Mm,
In the beginning, I wanted to solve everything for everyone and make everyone happy, but now I pick my struggles.
That's incredibly
Yeah.
important. That's extremely important, right? I think to be honest with yourself, but also, you know, be there for yourself as well. Within the week, within the days, within, you know, the crazy hours and so on, is incredibly important. Let's talk women empowerment, right? Um, Now, when we discussed this topic off air, you know, you've described it to me as the essence of your being. Um, Elaborate on that a little bit for me, in terms of where that passion comes from, um, and how it, you know, manifests currently in your life.
Okay. It's it's interesting because I've actually spent a bit of time just reflecting and trying to see like how I ended up on this path or this journey. And in the chapter, so the chapter that I've just co-authored, it actually looks at patriarchal societies, the challenges and the triumphs for women in Africa.
Mm.
And I started by reflecting on the relationship between men and women, where a woman must be submissive, where women are controlled, where women's roles are defined and prescribed from birth, you know, and also for men, obviously. But I think for me, for a very long time, I've been looking at society and I've been looking at relationships and how people engage with one another, and just feeling like women want to speak. Like, we want to speak. We want to be involved in the conversation. We have something to bring to the table. And coming to the sad realization that in a lot of the spaces women occupy, women are not allowed to speak.
Yeah.
And women will never get that chance to actually speak. And I find myself in the privileged position where I have a voice. And so it's almost like my responsibility to all the women that are silenced. It's a responsibility to women that are, even right now, trapped in relationships and homes with abusive men.
Yeah.
Women that have died at the hands of their abusers. Women that have been socialized and taught that this is how things are supposed to be. So it's my I think it's not only just my personal responsibility, it's everyone's, to speak for everyone who cannot speak for themselves. So that's kind of where it started. And you know, it was just having those experiences as a young girl, and then thinking it's funny, but thinking I was educated, I had financial freedom, I had now left Malawi where all of this was happening, and thinking, well, it can't happen to me anymore, you know, and feeling like I was safe, and then coming to South Africa and almost leaving one form of patriarchy and being oppressed by another, and just trying to understand how that even works. Like, you know, you think, yeah, you think you're bigger than it, you think you're greater than it, and then you realize you have a long way to go. So yeah, that's where that started, and why I am so passionate about it. And then just sort of moving into a space where I wanted to see women grow and do great things. And you know, a lot of the times we are actually encouraged to compete with one another. And I'm not here for that. So it became a thing where I wanted to mentor, I wanted to inspire, I wanted to speak. I wanted people to look at me and be like, but she's all about women and she's still winning and she's still great and she's surrounded by women that are winning and that are great too. So, you know, just build a positive domino effect rather than what we have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredibly profound. I want us to talk a little bit about how do we empower women, And I want to touch on three streams in particular.
Okay.
I want to touch on three, which is the one is in business.
Okay.
How do we empower women in business? The second is in our society. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And the third is how do we empower women in education as well? Now, on the business side of things, I would like you to link this back to me to business and people and your sort of people-centered approach. In society, I would like us to talk, a little bit about the practical steps that we need to take. And in education, I would like us to talk about, how do we inspire the girl child to become the best possible her. So in those three streams, how do we empower women in business, in society, and in education?
I have one answer for all three streams. This is not a tick box approach
Love
type
that.
of project.
I love
we're not trying to tick boxes, and that's how people are managing at the moment. Every time that there's a conversation about women not being allowed a seat, to basically take their seat at a table, companies or systems will come back and say, oh no, but 42% of these women are sitting in this position of power, and 10% of these women, and they'll hit us with stats, and those stats are only there because someone calculated and said we need this percentage of women to be in power, we need this percentage of women to study or fill this quota, or whatever the situation is. And it's not coming from a place of wanting to nurture and empower us. It's coming from a place of just ticking a box and once again silencing us. So I think the first thing across all three layers is remove the tick box approach. It was created to obviously to encourage people to meet those quotas, and to hit those numbers. But it also works against us sometimes, and it's such an emotional thing to say, but just allow us to be. I think from the time that we are born, boys are allowed to do what boys want to do. They can engage in rough play. They can go off on bikes and they can do whatever they want to do. And they'll never be told that they can't do that because they're a boy. But the minute that you put a woman or girl child in the conversation, you are told that you're too emotional to hold a position of power in business, for example. Or that, you are basically like, girls don't study that. It's not something that a woman will pursue in her career. So I think moving into a space where we stop doing things based on what we're going to be held accountable for, and we do things because we genuinely just want to allow the next person to be, regardless of who or what that version of self is going to look like. I feel like I come from a place of privilege because my parents never told me what I could or could not study, where I could or could not work. And that privilege, like the fact that I have to call it privilege, that's a problem. It should just be allowed, and I think one of the things about patriarchy is that it's that restriction of access. So we need to open up and make these things accessible, because it's one thing to say, okay, cool, go study what you want to study, or go ahead and be, in a position of power in whatever company, and then not actually allow us the access. So access is another part of the conversation that we really, really need to drive, and to embrace us when we do come into the room, and not to discredit us. And that's, I think, when I look at myself and where I am now, I think I sit in a position where I'm constantly discredited, where I've earned the seat at the table because I'm pretty, or it's because she's good looking, and to just allow us to be good looking and to be smart and to be phenomenal. Just allow us,
Yeah.
and allow us what we have worked for and what we deserve, and to see me as equal but different.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that when we fight for equality, we want to be men. We don't. We are equal but different, and I have my superpowers and you have yours, and I respect you for yours, and you should respect me for mine.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
That that's an incredibly powerful and impactful and insightful answer. I absolutely, love the part about, we need to remove the tick box approach. Um, it's not about stats, right? It, it's it's not about, it's one thing to you absolutely right. You have to open up the access to to those spaces, but also once those spaces are open, right? It's not a case of it's also about how you treat, the woman in those environments and in those spaces as well, right? And I think that is something we all need to take heed and to listen to, with great care, and and act rapidly and act accordingly as well. Um, as a final question to you, um, as we sadly draw this to a close, what has been a wonderful chat. In your journey of self discovery yourself, right? In in your own journey of self discovery, what role have female role models and mentors? I know you touched on mentorship a little bit earlier on. Um, played in your growth, and similarly to that, to juxtapose with that, um, you also mentioned a little bit about how you would actually, you're passionate about mentoring yourself as well, so mentoring others as well. um, you know, what are your views on, or rather, not what are your views, but are you open to mentoring others? And I guess the other point is that, if somebody does want to be mentored by you, or wants to seek advice from you, how do they take that step? Is it just a DM on Instagram? Is it what is it? Is it a an email? How do people sort of take that step for you to also fulfill that passion, that part of your passion as well?
Okay. Quite a lot to just work through there.
Mm,
I think mentorship, right? Just like networking, and how I view it, is something that can happen or take place in so many different ways.
mm,
So, for example, I have mentors who don't even know they're mentoring me. And that's because all I do is literally I sit and I read articles and I follow them, and I'm on their LinkedIn and I'm reading news and I'm seeing how they're doing things,
mm,
and I'm learning just from observing, right? Um, and the second sort of like the other side to the coin is I have my active mentors who are essentially women that have been my yes, and to get started, all you need is one yes.
love that.
I started influencing actually, I was approached by a woman who worked for a PR company, and she said, "Listen, like, I love your content, I love your photos. You've got a great eye for detail. Do you mind if I send you a package and you can just, take photos?"
Mm,
That's how I started. I started because of that one yes. And I'm still great friends with her because that was not her only yes for me. She saw something and she nurtured it and she encouraged it and she brought it out of me, you know?
yeah,
And she continues to sort of like add a chair Even when the table is full, she continues to just add a chair for Venencia, even just
Mm.
for me to sit and listen and watch. And, like, it's so powerful to see how one yes from one person can completely change a story.
Yeah.
And because that happened to me, I want to be a yes for someone, you know. So I think the whole mentorship idea, first and foremost, is about how you use resources and what's available to you. So if
Yeah.
you're on Instagram and you are following someone and all you are looking at is how fancy their dress is and how great their shoes are, you are actually doing yourself a great injustice.
Mm.
you know you should be looking at the events they're going to, how they're networking with people, how they
Mm.
work hard to prepare and be ready to be
Mm.
in that room with those people, how they are hustling to get the car and to get the house and to get everything else. Like, for me, it's all about your perspective. See it as a way to learn and a way to master, rather than just, oh, this is cute and this is great you know
Love.
and the second thing being, be intentional about it. Be intentional about who you want in your life. For me, I mean, Women of Stature has been such an incredible opportunity, and to be the youth ambassador for 2020 is
Mm.
like a dream come true. But once again, it's come because, again, someone said yes to me and someone saw something, and they're
Mm.
trying to nurture and to grow and to develop me. And the final thing is, sometimes, like, you could be looking at me now and thinking, I want V to mentor me, but I'm actually not what you need at this point in your life.
Mm.
And what I love about Women of Stature is Charlotte will always be like, I think Shireen will be the best person to guide you here. And I
Mm.
think Lynn will be the great person to guide you there. So surround yourself with someone that's not all about ownership and owning you and trying to be like, oh, yes, I mentored her and that's why she's achieved, but someone who genuinely wants the best of you to come to the surface, and someone who will give you that access, who will put you in those rooms and who position you to basically grow and develop. So those are the types of things that you should be looking at when you look for mentors. And like the same way that I treat my friendships, I have friends for different things, I have mentors for different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone does want to reach out, like, I'm easy, hey. You can literally DM me, you can literally reach to me, tell me about yourself. And if the vibes are there, it happens naturally. And that's how it's happened with the young girls that I do work with.
Mm.
And then another exciting thing and another way that you can sort of like figure out if I'm exactly who you need or what you need, or if it's someone else. For the month of August, I will be holding or hosting my own webinar series with young women. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to kick off in August when the book launch takes place. So, I mean, details will follow on my Instagram, but come through for those webinars because there's going to be other women in the room, a lot of mentors, a lot of women from Women of Stature. And
Mm.
so you could actually realize halfway through, the sessions that you found someone else who's a great fit for you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really profound, and I would encourage everybody to go and check that out, and to tell their friends and their friends' friends and their friends' families and their friends' families' friends.
Everybody.
Tell everybody in your neighborhood, right? Um, Venencia, I just want to thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. To host you, to speak to you, to listen to you. Um, I've learned an incredible amount. Just hearing you speak, about your approach to business. I absolutely love your approach to business. I love the energy that you bring to it. I love, the strategy element as well, and above all else, I absolutely love the people centered approach. And getting to know you, even a little bit more, than I know that I've known you before the episode as well. I trust that the episode has been a reflective one for you, and also an empowering one as well for yourself. I think sometimes it can be really empowering to look back at our own stories, and the things that we have learned through that, and to share that with others as well. And I just want to thank you for doing that today. Telling us, how to be a fixer, but also, realistically, what that entails, and
Mm.
the how you cope with that, in both, in a realistic sense, and in a sense of, this is actually where you want to be as well. um and sharing with us, your thoughts on women empowerment, and on the approach and the steps that we need to take, the practical steps that we need to take, the changes that we need to rapidly make. So I just want to thank you so much. This has been an absolute
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and I trust that you've enjoyed the episode as well.
I have. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great. It's everything I hoped for.
Oh, that's the best. That's really lovely to hear. But until we meet again, either virtually or in person, do stay safe.
Mhm.
Do stay healthy, and wear a mask. Wash your hands. And yeah, keep safe and keep healthy as well.
Thank you. And you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.